Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Take a Hike with Me. My name is Mallory and today we are at Mount Kessler. And standing here at Mount Kessler, I'm reminded of the time I moved to Phoenix many years ago. And on my way to Phoenix, I had to drive through the Rocky Mountains. Beautiful, wonderful mountain range, right? And then I get to Phoenix and people are like, there's Camelback Mountain, there's Piestewa Mountain, there's the South Mountains. And much like Mount Kessler, they're pretty underwhelming when you compare them to these massive mountain ranges. And it got me thinking, when does a hill stop being a hill and start being a mountain? Because sometimes I can't really tell the difference, especially on Mount Kessler. So I looked it up and I found out that there is no universally agreed upon definition of a mountain. Some people base it off of how steep it is. Some people base it off of elevation. Some people base it off of the landscape surrounding and whether or not it's a dominant figure in that landscape. But none of those really vibed with what I felt like a mountain would be, so I decided to come up with my own definition of a mountain. And my definition of a mountain is, if I climbed to the top, it's a mountain. So that I can say, hey guys, I climbed a mountain today. And if I've never climbed to the top, it's not a mountain. So Everest, not a mountain because I've never summited it. And I never will. So Everest will always be a hill to me because that's not a hill I'm willing to die on. Anyway, come explore this mountain with me. One thing you're bound to see if you go to the forest is a downed tree. And while they are amazing for hopping up on top of and walking along, I hear there are actually other benefits to them as well. They provide a great habitat for microorganisms, fungi, and insects that help break down these trees into soil that help the forest floor. And soil is an incredibly important thing, right? Because it feeds the plants around it. It feeds us because we use soil when we're farming. Unfortunately, by the year 2050, 95% of the soil will be degraded if we stay on the track that we're on currently, which would be pretty bad. This is mostly due to intensive farming practices and stuff like that. Hi, we're going to talk a little bit about white ash trees, and that is ash, A-S-H, not what you think I'm saying. So here we have a baby white ash tree right behind me. These trees can get pretty big, about 50 to 90 feet tall, but this one's just a little yearling or so, not very old. And this is what the leaves of a white ash tree look like. One thing to notice is that a white ash tree has opposite branching, which means that when you're looking at the branch, there's a leaf on this side and a leaf on this side of the same location, as opposed to alternate branching, which looks like this and means that there's either going to be a leaf on the right side or the left side, but not both at once. You may have noticed when I pointed to the leaves in the branching conversation that I pointed to this as a leaf and this as a leaf. That's because you actually identify what a leaf is by where the node is. I will get a nice photo of the node right here, and that means that this whole thing is a leaf and that whole thing is a leaf. And each leaf is going to have what they call leaflets. And on a white ash tree, there's going to be about 5 to 11 leaflets. This leaf has 7 leaflets on it. So that's pretty cool. And one other indicator of a white ash tree is that they're always going to have a terminal leaflet. So that means that at the end of their leaf, there's always going to be one leaflet, and it's called terminal because terminal just means at the end of some extremity. So here is our terminal leaflet of this white ash tree leaf. If you want to look for and find a white ash tree, they are all over the eastern United States. You can find them as far west as Colorado. They're pretty common. And one last fun fact about white ash trees is that the top of the leaf is darker than the bottom of the leaf, which I think is kind of fun. One thing you've probably noticed if you go into any wooded area is shield lichen. One interesting thing about shield lichen is that it will disappear if there's a lot of sulfur dioxide in the air and reappear if the air quality gets better. So it is a really good bioindicator of sulfur dioxide and the air quality in an area. And this is true for industrial areas, urban areas, and obviously the woodlands, and can be found very widespread. In fact, it is known to be widespread and weed-like to many in the United States. Now, it's not just found in the United States. It's found as far south as Baja California in Mexico, and it's found in 43 out of the 44 countries in Europe. Now, what's happening with that 44th country? Not sure, but they should get on board with shield lichen because it's a great bioindicator of air quality, as I just said. I have something very important to tell you guys, and that is that my favorite flower is a daisy. And so I'm sitting in front of a bunch of oxeye daisies today to tell you about them. They are from Europe and temperate parts of Asia, but they can now be found in the Americas, New Zealand, and Australia. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that they are an invasive species. As I said, they're originally from Europe, and now they're found pretty much all over the world, and that is because they were brought over. So while they're really cool and they're really pretty, they are a bit of a problem, and they are technically a weed. Big areas in which they are a problem is in pastures, and in pastures they are not getting eaten, which means they don't have the predation that's needed to get rid of them, so they're able to just grow because the cows aren't eating them. And it is said that the cows who do eat them, it causes their milk to taste bad in some kind of way. How does it taste bad? I haven't the faintest clue. But it is interesting that it causes cow milk to taste bad because it is used in teas in certain parts of the world. So just know that oxeye daisies, good for tea, bad for milk. Okay, so that bird you just saw was an indigo bunting, and here is a photo of it in case you couldn't tell from that amazing video what it looked like. So they are actually thought of sometimes as a blue canary because of how much they like to sing. And I have to admit, I like their song too. When I first read about them in my bird identification book, I read that they have a song that sounds like fire, fire, where, here, here. And I thought that was absolutely ridiculous, if I'm being honest. But I did just use that to identify an indigo bunting, so maybe it's not as ridiculous as I thought. So, indigo buntings are migratory birds that in the summer months can be found from Canada down to southern United States, and then during the winter months can be found from southern United States down to northern South America, which makes it have a super broad range, which is super cool. Indigo buntings are thought to migrate at night using the stars to navigate them. And I think it's really cool. That's something that we as humans used to do a lot when we were traveling by boat or just on a regular hike. We would use the stars to navigate us, and it's really cool to think of the fact that animals are also doing that. So it's currently migration season, which means that this indigo bunting may be gone tomorrow, because while we are in the summer range of the indigo bunting, this bed might be going up to Canada. You never know. So it might be gone tomorrow, which is sad to think about and impossible to know, but it's also pretty cool. And sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I like to think that maybe, just maybe, during migration season, there's an indigo bunting using the stars to navigate itself home above my head at that very moment. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 3 of Take a Hike with Me. I will see you next week. Later, taters.